have with us Deepika Rayala, Chief Digital and Information Officer, Cornerstone OnDemand. She's going to talk about AI-driven organization transformation. So please give a huge round of applause for Deepika.
That's right.
And then the red one goes back.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you, Samhita. Deepika Rayala, as Samhita said, a CDIO at Cornerstone. And for those of you that don't know Cornerstone, we've been around for years. We are in the learning and talent management space. And our flagship product is a cloud-based workforce agility product. We have about 125 million learners in 180 countries that are learning in 50 different languages, and every 2 seconds, someone's getting certified on a course. So this topic is very relevant to what we talk to our customers every day as they're going through this transformation in their organizations. And because I get to go third, I think George was saying big, little T. I know we heard about, no, we need to do the big T, and I think the answer, at least, is somewhere sometimes in the middle. If I can choose, it's the medium T. It's like a hybrid, because it's not one size fits all, because it depends on where you are in the evolution of your organization, and there's lots of macro dimensions that actually drive which parts can be a small t and which parts can be a big T. If you're a public company or a private company, there's a lot of constraints there. So that's definitely something I've seen through my own transformation journey, that it's not one or the other. It depends on where you are and which company you're in. But I do agree that we should ask the big questions and reverse engineer if you truly want to transform. So with that, I'm going to talk about two topics today. One is, how have we looked at our own enterprise AI journey in our company, Cornerstone? And the second is, I'm going to share a little bit of information around skills-based organizations and how do we think about shifting from a job-based organization to a skills-based organization, and why is it really important in today's world? So those are the two topics I'm going to touch on. So whether you do a small t or a big T, you need a framework. So what I've listed here are 6 key components that we looked at as we started on our enterprise AI journey. So, I'm not going to read through all of this detail here. As you can see, and I think most of you on this journey has probably experienced this to some extent. Governance. So, and I remember when I was here at this forum last year, we had a debate on the topic that said, who's actually going to run the AI forum? Is it the CIO? Is it the CISO? Who's actually going to run it? And I think in our own company, we've decided that the CIO is going to actually run the governance forum. But again, to the point that was raised before, running the forum doesn't mean you are the decision maker. That means you are the facilitator, and you make sure that the right people that need to make the decisions are at the table. So we run our governance in a way that IT is the facilitator. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the operating model, because I think this is also a good segue to the question that just got asked, right? So again, it depends on your organizational structure, your budget, and how big, global, and how function-based you are. Or are you running as a GM-based organization with different P&Ls with a lot of independence? So again, it's not one size fits all. You could go centralized, decentralized, or hybrid. And we chose to be hybrid. And what do I mean by hybrid? So what I mean by hybrid is, we think of our enterprise journey at 3 layers: enterprise-led, function-led, and citizen-led. And I think the answer is in all 3 of those, if you truly want to transform the organization in the right way. And what do I mean by that? And I have some examples in the next slide. But so when it's enterprise-led, this is where we get into a forum and we say, this makes sense for IT to drive because it's large, complex, there's a lot of data foundational aspects that need to get fixed before you build a solution. Even if you get an off-the-shelf solution or an embedded AI, say in a Salesforce platform or a ServiceNow platform, it makes a lot of sense for IT to be leading that. Whereas if you are in a legal department and you decided to buy an off-the-shelf legal AI tool to be able to do certain things, we say, function, go lead it. If you want an integration into the platform because you need to go get some data, let us know. So that for us is function-led. And citizen-led is like, for example, we've rolled out a digital hub across all of our company, which is within our four walls. I mean, I'm sure many of you have done this as well. And if someone from our customer success organization builds a great prompt, we give them the ability to share the prompt with the rest of the CSMs because we don't want every single CSM to become an expert prompt engineer. It's not required, right? So that to us is citizen-led where they build on top of what we have. Sometimes they come to us with some brilliant ideas, but it makes more sense to scale it enterprise-wide, so we help them, but we actually scale it. So that's really the operating model we've used, and this has skin in the game across the board. So it's not us versus them, it's your problem versus our problem, we're all in it together. And I won't say it's working super great, I can tell you we're getting there, right? So in the interest of time, I'm going to not go through a lot more detail. I covered this in a bit more detail because I thought the operating model was an important topic. Build versus buy from an implementation options and velocity perspective. I'm sure, and we've heard this in other presentations, we want early wins. We want the low-hanging fruit, somewhere where we can show real credibility and outcomes and ROI. So we've picked a few of those use cases that have gone well. So we do have about 60% of our organization using what we call the digital hub that we've rolled out and some of the applications that are built on top of it. So it was good to hear our CEO in our last one-on-one last week tell me that he wants to invest more and he wants me as leading IT and facilitating the forum to come back with my business partners to tell him what investment we need to go to the next step. So that was a good sort of comforting factor for all the work that went into it over the last 18 months. Then going on to resource mix and skills, and I think this was another question around CXO partnership, and I have a quick slide I'll flash after this, and we absolutely have all of the C-suite people in a steering committee deciding what we need to focus on, because if you go function by function, there are a lot of things that we need to do, but we need to find the big rocks and the bang for the buck use cases, so that's definitely something we are working on. And enablement and adoption, I can't speak enough about that, and without that, you can't get anything out the gate and be successful. Privacy, compliance, and sponsorship, again, we have sponsorship at 3 levels. Our CEO is vested now, I think more so now since we've seen some results than probably a year ago. We definitely have the CXOs at the table and the individual functional leads. So those are the 3 layers that are actively involved in this program. So this is the governance model or the operating model that I was talking about and the examples that I gave. So this is a framework we've shared across the company, and everyone uses this. This is sort of our Bible in some ways, so we know who owns what part of the step, depending on which type of implementation we are embarking on. And here is our Enterprise Digital Forum in terms of who's playing what role. And again, we've been tweaking it over the last year, and some of it has exceptions to it, but overall, I think I would say we are 70% there. And then moving on to my next topic, and this applies to our own enterprise journey, but more so just from data that when we work with our own customers, these are these are nuggets we talk to them about, right? So as an organization, as you're trying to become an AI-based company, I think there's a saying now that says it doesn't matter what industry you're in, everyone is underlying a technology company, right? So one of the things we talk to our customers about is organizations need to move from being job-based companies to skills-based companies. And it's not that we're hearing this for the first time, but it's more imperative that companies do that now, right? And so, and why, and it's very clear in terms of why, whether it's innovation and it's the ability to be able to really look forward into the types of skills you need to be the company you want to be, which we just heard in the previous presentation as well. For all those reasons, we want to be a skills-based company. And what we are noticing is that when we sit down with our customers and say, like, but why is it so hard, right? It's hard because there's a visibility gap. Companies are blindsided. They don't really have the data about the skills and capabilities within their own organization. And the reason for that is because you have all of this data sitting in multiple places. I mean, I would say that we actually internally are also fixing that problem ourselves. So when you hire a person, the skills of the person you're trying to hire is in your recruiting system. And once they come in, you have this talent management system. And sometimes that system is different from your HRIS system. And more importantly, what are you benchmarking this data against? You have to benchmark this data against your industry and even the bigger picture. And I know we were talking about this at our own table when we were brainstorming earlier, is if you look at the labor market, right? So, and think about it as 4 segments, right? So one being the learners and the job seekers, and 1 being the companies that are trying to hire for certain skills, and 3 being our government that's writing policies around certain things that impact the labor market, and 4 being educational institutions and others that are training people, assuming that there is a skill gap in certain areas, and what are people actually learning through these institutions. And if we draw a Venn diagram of all of those, we will find a lot of gaps, right, and disconnects. It's because all of that data doesn't actually gel together, and not everybody is driving with the right level of visibility. So what can we do about it? Oh, I think I lost a slide here, but I can talk to it. I think what we recommend, and we actually have software tools for that as well, but it doesn't matter what tool it is, but as a concept, we want customers to focus on skills exchange and skills passport. At least keep that as a goal. What does that mean? What is skills exchange? One is what I talked about, where this data is sitting in different places. You need to bring it together, harmonize it, and be able to benchmark it. So you know where your future forward is, and you know where you are on that journey. And what is a skills passport? A skills passport is a digital wallet for your skills. And I will give you an example because it's publicly shared. The kingdom in the Middle East, we have a kingdom that we're working with that has 17 million employees, not employees, citizens actually. And what we ended up doing is giving a digital skills passport to every single citizen in the kingdom. And now what does this do? It democratizes your skills management. So when they go for an interview the next time, what they did in their previous years is in that digital wallet. It's not that half an hour that's going to define, how their interview goes. That's 1. And 2, as a whole country, they're able to look at their skills across the country, not just a company, and be able to optimize for what they need and how they need to reskill the entire country. So there's multiple layers in which we are seeing people think about it now, not just at the people level, the company level, but also at a country level, right? And so this could be the future of where we could be when we have skills passports available, not just, like I said, at the company level, but maybe even at a macro level. So that's really where we think it is important to focus on if you truly want to do a successful AI transformation from a skills perspective so that you're ready for the future. So that's all I had to share. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Deepika. On your first slide, you had, when you're talking about buy versus build and MVPs, could you speak about the prioritization framework for use cases? A lot of companies struggle with ROI of use cases, and a lot of them get stuck in this pilot purgatory, right? You don't get value. And I'm wondering if there is a science to it, or is it like a combination of art and science, right? So can you talk about the ROI, the MVPs, and how do you decide which ones you want to scale for maximum benefit to Cornerstone and also to your customers?
Sure. I mean, I'll talk about this more from an internal perspective. I know we have this also from our product platform perspective as customers are coming to us and asking for features. So if I look at it as enterprise IT internally, right? So when I look at AI, we look at 4 buckets, right? So 1 is embedded AI in your existing platforms, 2 is off the shelf, and 3 is co-pilots, and 4 is custom. Now, each one of these have different costs associated with it, and off the ground, right? So yes, there's multiple dimensions to this. One is like, when we prioritize, it's like, what's the big rock, right? Is it truly making an impact? And for that, it's a combination of IT and the business sponsors sitting together and making a case to this. We go to the forum, we all decide in the forum, because we have finite number of resources, that this is truly a big rock we want to work on, right? And we do have a calculator, by the way. It's an art and science, but we still have a calculator. And then if it's embedded AI as an example, and I'm not, how are we doing on time? Okay, all right. So for example, and I'll take a very specific example, especially because there's lots of sort of IT folks in the room. You have Salesforce as a platform, and there's always a discussion that comes up that says, why not Salesforce agents, right? Yeah, there's a lot of press around it, but it's not the time yet. It's not the time yet because every conversation costs $2, and all of your data needs to be repopulated into the data cloud, which is a duplication in the current landscape, the way it's architected, right? So those are the decisions that are easy to make, to say, no, I might actually go build or get a small off-the-shelf tool to augment it. I'll pause there. So there's a lot of sort of scenario-specific discussions that happen. And yeah, and we look at it from both ends, big rocks, quick wins. So it's both ends of the spectrum.
So the belief of what will be the skills and the competence of the future, assuming that many of those that are connected with execution could be progressively transformed in a different setup, is bringing the necessity to requalify if right now we are trying to embed in our future workforce the right skills, or if we are preparing for those skills that are going to be meaningful in the medium term. No? Is that a debate that you have triggered within the organization? Is something that is not solved yet?
So 2 things. So if you talk about, so like I said, we are a company that has the world's biggest jobs, architecture, taxonomy, and data available. So we, from that database perspective, we have multiple levels of data. Like you could look at the entire global data, and interestingly, I'll share a fact, it's not AI that has the biggest gap right now. If you look at that data, from what I hear from our consultants that go do this specific work, it's really nurses and home care resources, right? But if you just ask the question, most, probably a large number of people will say, the skill that has the biggest gap right now in the global economy is AI, right? So So to answer your question, yes, we have that type of data, but that's still macro level. So I think if I'm understanding your question correctly, if you're an organization, you have the ability to take your industry, your job architecture, and where your company is headed and compare it to the benchmark, right? And we are using our own data to do that. And obviously, it's not simple because you need to first define your job architecture in a way that it's the right way to compare things, right? I don't know if I answered your question. Any other questions? Okay.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Deepika.